What's up, Disrupt Nation? So, my name is Anthony Delgado, and I want to thank you for joining the Power of the Podcast course. So, in this course, we're going to talk about, why podcasts are so important, how podcasts have changed my life and had a huge impact on me, and then how you can apply those same skills in your own life and hopefully start your own podcast. So first and foremost, before I dive into that, for those of you who don't know, my name is Anthony Delgado, and I've been a serial entrepreneur, digital marketer, and general growth hacker for the last 10 plus years. And, the world has changed a lot since I got into the industry. And even though all these things have changed, a lot of things stayed the same. So, the era and the wave that we see with podcasts and social media, this era has come before, when radio was being replaced by television, there were tons of radio stars that didn't adapt, right? And they have that meme that TV killed the radio star, right? And right now the same thing is happening with online media. Podcasts being a huge part of that, and this renaissance is really being driven to audio having a second life. Right, audio died when television replaced the radio, and radio kind of had to take a second seat. The radio platforms, they were actually like radio celebrities back in the early 50s and 60s, and then as television gained more domination, radio continued to die and die and die and die. And when it was almost on its last leg, now the internet comes in and it's doing the same thing to television. So, in this course, which we're going to get into in a few minutes, we're going to get into why all of these massive influencers, like Oprah, like Alec Baldwin, like Joe Rogan, like Gary Vaynerchuk, like Grant Cardone, why are all these people moving onto this platform of podcast? But again, so before I get back into that, a little bit about me. So I'm the host of the Disrupt podcast. So the Disrupt podcast is a globally syndicated show where we interview some of the world's most elite entrepreneurs, business owners, and creators and hackers, right? So we've interviewed people like Gerard Adams, John Mullott, Paul Getter, and that's just to name a few. And, there's been tons of amazing and inspirational conversations. If you read our reviews on Apple, iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify, you'll see that people's lives have actually been impacted from listening to these stories. In addition to running the Disrupt podcast, we also run Disrupt University, and that's where you are right now. So Disrupt University is an online alternative education platform, and we believe that technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship can create means for people like yourself to create financial freedom for themselves, their families, and their lives, right? I'm also a contributor for Forbes. So I'm a member of the Forbes Technology Council. And if you look my profile up, I'll try to leave a link somewhere so that you can check it out. But I've released articles like, the top 10 reasons why Puerto Rico is perfect for digital nomads. And that's actually where I am right now. I'm shooting this from my house in Catalina, Puerto Rico, which is kind of like the Hollywood Hills of Puerto Rico. And, podcasts, social media, and the digital economy has allowed me to move from New York City. I wasn't born and raised in Puerto Rico. It's allowed me to move from New York City and create financial freedom for myself and not be tied to a 9-to-5 job, not be tied to punching a clock, not be tied to a certain geographical location. And so in addition to that, I've also, like I said, been a child of the internet for the last 10 years. So I got started out selling things on eBay and Amazon. Then I got really heavy into digital marketing, bots and automation. I was creating Twitter bots, almost 8 or 9 years ago now, before bots was even like a buzzword. I was creating bots. So I really lived this evolution, and this wave of disruption is going to continue to come. Another article that I recently wrote on Forbes is the top 3 impacts on society that artificial intelligence and automation is going to cause. So what's happening right now in the job force is all of these jobs are getting replaced. So one of the big ones, one of the next waves that's really going to devastate the American economy is the trucking industry. Trucking industry, traditionally, a lot of my friends had fathers who were truckers, right? This was a middle class job where people were able to provide income for their families. It was really like a good middle class job. And Tesla has released a truck that they're testing right now. Walmart is part of the pilot program. Walmart pre-ordered 14 of these trucks and is testing them as we speak. And within the next 5 years, analysts predict that the trucking industry and these trucking jobs are going to be extinct. Amazon is also working on its own version that competes with Tesla with self-driving cars. Uber is going to be creating self-driving cars that now displaces all of the taxi workers, right? So the whole transportation industry is about to get flipped on its head, right? It's a lot of job loss. That's why this course is so important. Podcasts are a way for you to, whatever industry that you're in, whether you're a real estate broker, whether you're a lawyer, an attorney, whether you just want to be an influencer, build a brand, if you're in e-commerce, it really doesn't matter what industry you're in, there is a space for you in podcasts. One of the people that's actually in our program right now is a love and relationship coach. And he's using podcasting as a platform to help communicate his love and relationship services. So back to the disruption of automation. So, transportation, huge thing. The next disruption that's occurring is with even upper middle class jobs. So things like lawyers and accountants. Those were traditionally really stable jobs, right? Jobs where you could make tons of money. And now you have things like QuickBooks, you have things like LegalZoom, and these things are removing the need for mediocre lawyers. Now that doesn't mean that lawyers are gonna go away. That doesn't mean that accountants are gonna go away. So, your prayers aren't 100% answered there, but mediocre lawyers are gonna go away. So unless you're the top of the line, unless you're that Johnny Cochran grade attorney, your job is going to be disrupted by a service like LegalZoom. And it's the same thing with accountants. There will still be high-level CPAs. There will still be need for chief technology officers, chief financial officers in organizations. Those things will still be there. But the simple accounting jobs, that a mom and pop accountant up the block, that job is going to be disrupted. So again, it's never been a better time to start a podcast and start differentiating yourself, right? When I'm looking for an accountant, when I'm looking for an attorney, right? What is going to sway me from using LegalZoom or actually working with the lawyer that I follow his podcast and that I consume his content online and digitally? That differentiator is going to be your personal brand. And that personal brand, the anchor to that personal brand, can be your podcast. So that's a little bit about me and some of the work that I've done over at Forbes. And, you might hear all that and say, oh, this guy sounds like super fancy, right? And the truth is, I actually come from super humble beginnings. My mother was a single mother. I grew up in a lower middle class town. I got kicked out of college, and, me being kicked out of college was actually like a blessing and a curse rolled into one. I actually took some of the refunds that I got from student loans and I invested them online. And that was my first introduction to online marketing back in 2005. So, I say all that to say, I'm not perfect. I grew up in a lower middle class household, and I've been able to create a life on my own terms. So if I'm able to create a life on my own terms, that's why we're creating this course. That's why we're creating this content, because we feel that you can be able to achieve that as well. So now let's talk about podcasts. So obviously, if you're watching this course, if you're watching this video, you want to start your own podcast. And the good news is you're in the right place. We've created this curriculum and we've created this masterclass and this coaching program to enable you and empower you to create your own podcast. But before we dive into that, why are podcasts even important, right? So 16 million US adults are avid podcast fans, and over 50% of households in the United States are podcast listeners. So take a step back and think about that for a second. 50% of the entire country is listening to podcasts. This is an opportunity unlike any other. And at the end of December, right before New Year's, I said this is going to be the year of the podcast. And I stand here now and I'm very, very confident, even more confident than I've ever been. We've seen people like The Rock launch podcasts. We've seen people like Oprah, like Will Ferrell. And the industry is catching up. The television stars don't want to become the radio stars. So as we see that paradigm shift now, there's really never been a better time to get on board. One of the other stats that I love about podcasts is that the average median income of podcast listeners, 45% of podcast listeners make $75,000 a year or more. So these are upper middle class people who are listening to podcasts, and that means that they are consumers with money to spend. All right, why do you care about that? Podcasts are giving you an opportunity to then do brand deals and monetize your podcast with advertising and affiliate programs. So brands will actually pay you a commission based on your listenership. So that is something that we're going to get into in the course. One of the other crazy things about podcasts is that it's allowing people to gain time that they never had before. So people are listening to podcasts while they're on their way to work, in their cars, while they're working out on the treadmill, while they're at home, and they're gaining time back that they never had before. There was never another time where you could learn something while you were at the gym, or learn a new topic or a new skill while you are cooking breakfast for your family. So podcasts, again, are really on the rise. So there's never been a better time to start a podcast. And, this is one of those videos that people are going to replay in a year, in 18 months, maybe even in 6 months. And people are going to be kicking themselves and be like, why didn't I listen to Anthony? Why didn't I start my podcast? Right now, Will Ferrell just launched his podcast. This is a comedian that's, been nominated for awards, has, done movies, been on Saturday Night Live, has television appearances, like world-renowned individuals. Oprah. When Oprah has a podcast and her one link in her bio on Instagram, she only gets one link. And it's not to Oprah.com, and it's not to Netflix, and it's not to YouTube. Her one link is to Apple Podcasts. You know that this thing is coming. And so I'm urging you to take action. I'm urging you to really do it now, because, if you don't, you are going to be left behind. So that's the reason why we created the Disrupt Podcast Mastermind. We're only going to be accepting a limited amount of people, and this course is designed to help you launch your podcast in 90 days. So we're going to have a rolling enrollment every 90 days. There's going to be a limited amount of spots. Once those spots fill up, we're going to have to close the doors. We are guaranteeing you that you will launch your podcast in 90 days if you take the steps that we provide you. One of the biggest problems, one of my mentors, Jeremy Ryan Slate, he told me that where most people fail in podcasts is they don't make it past 10 episodes. They create 1 episode, 2 episodes. They don't know where to publish it. They only publish it on one platform, right? They do 2 or 3 podcasts and then they give up, right? So we've created this course to one-on-one, give you one-on-one coaching and give you accountability so that you don't give up. So one of the other things that we help you with is helping you get published, right? Getting published is a huge thing. There are tons of platforms. Apple Podcasts isn't the only one. Spotify isn't the only one. We want to get you on all the major platforms, and that's something that we help you do inside of the course. Inside of the Disrupt Podcast Mastermind, we help you with the who, what, when, where, and why of podcasts. And the why is one of the most important ones. Why are you starting this podcast? Who are you communicating with? What audience are you speaking to? And how can you monetize your podcast? How can you make money from your podcast? If you're a real estate agent and an attorney, how can you turn those podcast listeners into actual sales? How can you turn those people into customers for your business? If you don't have a business, if you're working like a 9 to 5 and you're trying to quit, okay, how can you do brand deals? How can you do advertising deals to monetize your podcast? And how can you get the listenership, right? How can you help people discover your podcast? So those are all the things that we're going to cover inside of this course. One of the other things that we're going to help you with is syndication, right? So a lot of people that I know, they have one podcast and it goes out on YouTube, then you look and the other podcast is going out on SoundCloud, and it's not synchronized, right? So I'm a big believer in working harder, not smarter, right? If I'm uploading to 20 different platforms, I'm not going to have time to jump into a pool in Puerto Rico, right? And the whole reason why I became a digital nomad, the whole reason why I decided to quit my job and move to Puerto Rico was so that I could have more time to enjoy my life, right? So we work on creating automations with you so that you can upload your podcast once and have it syndicated everywhere. We also help you with what's called growth hacking. So coming from a digital background of the last 10 years of marketing strategy, we help you apply those marketing strategies so that you can get new listeners, get new people to download and subscribe to your podcast, and really help it blow up. There's over 500,000 podcasts that are already published out there, so you do have a lot of competition. So we help you synchronize and syndicate your podcast so that it gets discovered by more listeners. And we also help you with the strategies of tweaking your podcast so that it automatically gets discovered. And then one of the most exciting things is that we give you the opportunity to join the Disrupt Podcast Network. So the Disrupt Podcast Network, everyone who comes through our program has the opportunity to join it. And we publish your podcast on our online magazine. We help you by syndicating your podcast on our own social media. And then we do the same thing to the other people on the podcast inside of the podcast mastermind. So people are going to be helping each other, giving each other coaching. If you're doing an interview style show, which is one of the many styles that you can choose from, we can help you get guests booked on your show, right? We've interviewed close to 100 people already. So, helping you get some of those guests on your show is definitely something that we're able to provide for the people in our mastermind. And then the most exciting part, and the whole reason why we're doing this, is at the end, you get a trip to Puerto Rico. So we give you a ticket to our Disrupt Mastermind in Puerto Rico. We only do them a few times a year, and you get an exclusive opportunity to come to Puerto Rico with us. We mastermind. We have a amazing 2-day mastermind session where you work with me one-on-one, you work with my team of other influencers and social media marketers and experts one-on-one, and we help you create your dream podcast and also how to integrate that into your marketing strategy for your business, right? So, to quote the future, we help you with the business of podcasts and the podcast of business, right? Because all this stuff is fun. Social media is fun. Creating content's amazing. But if you're not monetizing, you're not going to be able to keep that up for so long. So I'm inviting you to join the masterclass. We're going to put a link either below or above, whatever. And I'm inviting you to join the masterclass, join the mastermind. We will launch your podcast in 90 days. And at the end of all of that, I'm inviting you to come out to Puerto Rico with us and join the program. So I want to thank you. I think that's it. I think we kind of covered most of the things. But if you're interested, again, click one of the links. There'll be a link somewhere. And yeah, I'll see you in Puerto Rico.